Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our full moon, which is happening in the star of Dhanistha, which is a star that bridges Capricorn and Aquarius. And it's going to be at 8:25 a.m. here in Hawaii, which is 11:25 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And that's going to be on Monday, the 19th of August, so tomorrow. Um, this is a really interesting star, Dhanistha. It, like I said, goes from Capricorn into Aquarius. And this full moon's happening at the very beginning of Aquarius, right across from our sun that just moved into Leo. If you got a chance to see my video on the sun in Leo, that will really enhance some of what I'm sharing here today. We're going to focus on the other end of the spectrum. The sun moved into Leo, and we're just stepping into our power, where Venus and Mercury have been. And now we see that reflection that the full moon brings, but of course, it's coming at the very beginning of the cycle. It's coming before we've actually had the sun's tenure in Leo for very long. And Aquarius and Capricorn are both ruled by Saturn. And of course, our moon is going to be joined by our retrograde Saturn as well here. There's a real humility and almost a lack of power in Saturn's two signs. We, particularly in Aquarius, tend to be more hidden and in the background, moving things forward in humanity, not by the force of our will or our presence, but more by this sort of behind the scenes mechanism and this real understanding of the interworkings of society, of perhaps technology, of just all the different ways that the things of this world come together. And Dhanistha fascinates me because it is a star that has a lot to do with manifestation. It's sometimes translated as steady wealth or wealth that is steady. I've heard the translation steady sound as well. The root, Dhan, like we often will see with Dana yoga, which has to do with wealth. Dhan is also sound. And Istha is this on its own has to do with like desires and the outcome of those desires. What we get from our desires is where we put our energy, right? Is what we get. And Stha on its own has to do with being, existing, this staying power, this quality of presence and existence. Stha relates to that. The word sthira in yoga is often used for like the steadiness of pose, like to hold a pose in a steady place. So we have this consistency, this quality of consistency that brings us wealth, which we can interpret in many different ways, right? Wealth isn't necessarily monetary. Wealth, a wealthy society, a true wealthy society wouldn't just have a small percentage of people with a lot of money and a high GDP. It would be a place, a society of people who all had all their needs met, right? Everyone mattered enough to have abundance of food and shelter and love and happiness and connection and time for play and enjoyment. So when we think of a wealthy society, we don't necessarily think of one which there's this, small sector that have money and the rest of the people are struggling, or even one where everyone just has a lot monetarily, but they don't have a high quality of life. We can see this throughout the world. There's places that are considered poor countries or places where people actually are happier than in places that are considered to be more wealthy. So we want to obviously really look at our definition of wealth when we're thinking about this. But the steady quality is also really important. And this is where I really appreciate that translation of sound, because the star is symbolized by Shiva's drum, right? This meeting out of time with a constant steady rhythm. And if we think of the sound Om, and also in many other traditions, the idea that life began with a sound, and from that sound, everything else emanated. And in Vedic thought, the 8 Vasu who rule this star are kind of what came next, right? These rays of light. And it's the sun, it's the moon, it's the stars, and then it's the elements. fire, earth, water, air, space. And these initial stuff that came are the rays of light that then manifest everything else. This is life manifesting itself, right? Creation wanted to create, and creation comes from more creation, and more creation comes from that. And going back to the Capricorn Aquarius bridge that this star makes, it's an interesting thought to think that creation could begin, or manifestation could begin, with something solid in the concrete, practical realm of Capricorn, this earth sign, and move into an air sign. Because I, for one, would always think of like, oh, it starts with an idea and then you have to do something about that idea. And this kind of turns that on its head a little. It's like, okay, well, there's the doing in Capricorn, which has always been there, right? There's something we're always doing. In the creation cycle of the universe, there's contraction and expansion. So there's perhaps more of a void from which this initial creation has come from. But there's a past. And Capricorn's very much stuck in that past, and it keeps us stuck in that past through the work that we have to do, the toils we have to do in order to survive. It keeps us attached to our bodies. And sometimes it's hard to move out of that because the commitment and requirements of staying alive with our body can make it difficult to see outside of that and see where we can go from there. And then when we move into Aquarius, we start to have this more visionary mindset of where we can go, what could be different, how could we change this? We don't have to just stay serfs in our little kingdom, toiling our plot of land. Maybe there's a way to make it easier. Maybe there's some kind of technology or tools we could use. Maybe there's a way we can help each other out. Maybe there's a way we can overthrow the king. The king doesn't seem to be helping us too much, maintaining all of the wealth over there. So there's this other kind of way of seeing things. And this sparks new ideas that bring us into the future. And so that steady quality that Dhanistha takes us with, because of course Dhanistha does not cover all of Aquarius or Capricorn, there's a capacity to really produce something from that, because showing up consistently is very important. Dhanistha is also ruled by Mars, who rules that discipline, that ability to show up again and again and again and do something. That's how you don't lose weight by exercising once. You have to exercise every single day. You don't get strong by lifting weights one day. You have to do it consistently every day. Everything that we do to care for our bodies, our material world that we're living in, our homes, our empires, whatever that looks like, our children, it's daily. And we have to do it every day. And we have to do it regularly and consistently. So Dhanistha really shows us that. The 8 Vasu have a very interesting tale that I'd like to share from the Mahabharata, which is this epic tale from India, in which is embedded the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most important spiritual texts in the Indian spiritual world. And in this story, the sky Vasu, or the space Vasu, is sitting by the river, the Ganges, and he's sitting with his wife, and she spots this beautiful cow flying by in the air. This is like the cow of plenty that always gives more and more and more. I can't think of his name right now, but it's this beautiful white lustrous cow, and there's other stories around it too. And it actually belongs to the sages. Vasu is the keeper of this cow, and Kamandenu, that's the name of the cow of plenty. And so the sky Vasu then goes after this cow for his wife and brings it back to her, and she wants to keep it because it's the great, amazing cow that just gives you whatever you want and wish fulfills, anything you want to manifest. And Vasitya notices the cow is not there anymore, and he's a deep meditator. He's a very powerful sage. He's able to figure out who has it. And so he takes all the 8 Vasu and says, I'm going to punish you. You can't do this. And they all beg for mercy. They're like, please, please, we didn't even know our brother was doing this. Like, can you not punish all of us? And so he amends his curse, which the sages often do. There's all kinds of curses that get amended, which is a good sign of compassion in these later texts. And he says, okay, each of you will have a very short life. Oh, the curse. The curse is that they're going to have to become earthlings. They're going to have to come to Earth and be born as humans, which is, of course, a curse. Because coming to Earth and living in this reality of the day in and the day out is difficult. There's a lot of toil involved in it. When we think of the higher realms and the ways in which we could be operating, we choose struggle on a daily basis down here on Earth. And so that's when they beg and say, please don't make us be Earthlings, anything but that. And he says, okay, I'll amend this curse. Most of you will just have this really short life, like it'll be a brief existence, and then you can go back to being your Vasu selves. But Sky Vasu, you're going down. You're going to live a long, long life on that earth plane. And so it goes, and they go to Ma Ganga, to the river goddess, and they beg her to become their mother. And she agrees. So she comes out of the river. There's this handsome king that's sitting by the river one day, and she comes upon him in the form of a beautiful woman. And she tries to sit upon his lap. And he is like, lady, I don't know what you're doing. This is, my lap is for my wife. And so she feels ashamed and goes back into the river. Well, years later, that king has a son, and he's the prince, and he comes and sits by her river, and she tries again. And she comes out in her beautiful form and sits upon his lap, and he is like enamored and says, yes, I want to marry you. I love you. And she says, okay, well, there's going to be one condition to this marriage. We can get married and have a beautiful life, but you must never question anything I do. And of course, he agrees to that, which is not recommended. And so they get married and they have children, and each child that they have, she takes as soon as it's born and drowns it in the Ganges, thus killing it. And the man is like, I don't know, he sticks around for this. So it happens 7 times. And then finally for the 8th one, he's like, please don't kill this baby. And she's like, okay, no problem. And leaves him with the child and goes back into the river herself. And that child becomes Bhishma, who's the grandfather in the Mahabharata of this family and this epic tale. And he is, of course, not married and has a kind of difficult life, which shows a lot around this star and its relationship to things like marriage and love. It's a very practical star. It's not the best star for marriage, particularly in the Capricorn side of it. There's can be difficulty around that. So I also like the story because it really kind of shows the karmic effects we have in our life, right? That there's this concrete reality of where we take action, and then that action gives us what we have to work with for our future material, what we have to make stuff out of. And in truth, we have the moon and the sun and the stars and all the elements, but our limited vision and what we're stuck with is our karma. That is our reality, because we're stuck in our patterns of what's possible. And that's how we continue to get stuck in these ruts. So we have an opportunity, particularly in this part of the star, where we move into Aquarius, to really move outside of that. And the fact that Saturn is nearby, and I'm just going to share my screen really quick. I'm not going to talk too much because, like I said in my video on the sun in Leo that I just did 2 days ago, you can really see a lot or hear a lot about the sun and Mercury and Venus being together, Mercury retrograde and Venus being with the sun, and Mars is drishti on Venus. And there's lots of interesting things going on right now that I don't need to repeat. But Saturn, I didn't really talk about as much because he's really related to this moon and this reflection we're having right now on our power and how we hold that power. We are kings and queens of our world. And perhaps in other ways in the world, we also hold power. And it is the little people or the little parts of ourselves that need that give the feedback, right? How are we doing? You know, our powerful part of ourself, our consciousness is always receiving feedback from all the other parts of ourself about how that leadership is going. And in a, you know, group of people or any kind of situation where we hold leadership, we receive that feedback from the people to whom we're leading. And that's how we know, you know, what to adjust and what to change. That's the humility that's present with both Aquarius and Capricorn and Saturn signs. And it's the humility that Saturn's presence is really also bringing to this moon. Now, since Saturn's retrograde, we might be a little backed up on some of our commitments. You know, we might not be doing all the things that we're committed to doing, and we might be questioning some of the things that we have chosen to commit to and how much time we have. Because Saturn is ultimately our awareness and recognition of time. Well, what's the answer? Meditate more, dive in deeper, expand your time, and allow that meditation to really show you what is important, where your time needs to go, where your energy needs to flow. And anything that's really important should be receiving your attention. And then naturally, the things that are less important will start to devolve in other ways. As we put attention on one particular area of our life, other things, you know, start to shift away. And then maybe later we're like, oh, that thing never, you know, hasn't been receiving attention and we need to give a little attention to that. It's like ever moving flow. It's not like this one thing is the only important thing always. We need to constantly be shifting what it is we're expending our energy on. And so this capacity to slow down that we're receiving, not just from Saturn, but of course Mercury as well, and this capacity to really humble ourselves enough to not just charge forward, just to maintain power or hold power, but to really tune in to all the things that we're leading and make sure that we're in integrity. This is a big, important piece of the puzzle. So I urge you to take this moment to really sit with yourself, what your future looks like, what your dreams look like, how you imagine that fitting into the bigger picture, because we're not just single entities here, you know, doing our own thing. And how can I lead my empire? How can I, you know, hold my power? But how can I make that work with everything else that's going around? Because we are part of this very integral operation here, and we all need each other. The stars just can't be stars in the sky, right? There needs to be everything else. We can't just be a lone little shining sun. The sun would be insignificant if there was nothing to shine its light on. You know, we wouldn't see the moon, and we wouldn't have life on Earth. So there'd be no one to appreciate the warmth the sun was giving. It's great. The sun is giving us a lot. It's giving us our light. It's giving us our warmth. It's giving us our very existence here on Earth. But if we weren't here, then it would just be a shining orb in the sky. You know, it wouldn't even be in the sky because there wouldn't be an Earth to look at it up in the sky. It would just be a big ball of fire. And so it's important to reflect upon what we are giving our energy to and the ways in which we're holding ourselves. What's that bouncing off of? So I wish you many blessings on this full moon, and I hope to see you again soon. If you want to know how this full moon is affecting you, because of course Aquarius is a specific sign for you, Leo is a specific sign for you, Saturn holds specific houses in your chart, and that really talks about what area of your life is being highlighted in this cycle. I do reports weekly for my Cosmically Aligned Patreon group where I highlight the transits for each week for every sign, including yours. So you can check that out at patreon.com, Radha Home Astrology, and I will see you soon. Namaste.